Chambers, and my guest today is an honorable member of the House of Representatives, Honourable Bashiru Dawodu, and he's a chairman of the House Committee on Disability Matters. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. Now let's jump straight into the issues. The House of Representatives considered and adopted the report of its Committee on Finance regarding the 4 tax reform bills and made some critical amendments. First, with the VAT sharing formula, 50% to be distributed equally, 20% to be distributed based on population, and 30% to be distributed based on consumption. How significant are these amendments and in ensuring the interests of Nigerians are protected?
Well, this is a very significant development when you look at the overall premise of the bill. I think that we can safely say that you're moving the ball forward. But for us, as regards the disability community, over 35.5 million Nigerians that are involved in that, we think this is just the first step. We don't think that this has actually addressed a lot of our concerns that we brought forward during the process. So, but we look forward to continue to work with the folks that are involved in the implementation of this reform and see the areas that we can still tweak as we go forward.
So are you saying that this was not a unanimous agreement? There are still reservations held by your colleagues?
Well, you know, you're talking about 360 members in the House, and we know that the majority generally will have their way, let's put it that way. But from the comments of what we still have in our community, we think there are still areas that were not addressed. But hey, that's what we're doing now. That we're having our say.
So what are those areas?
For example, when you look at some of the things that we put forward, we think that if you are making investments, and in terms of investments in disability issues, for example, if you are importing wheelchairs and things that are related to accessibility, we wanted a situation where it's either there are no VAT, or that their VAT is exempt, or they have very little or nothing to pay in that regard. We don't think that is adequately addressed in this particular bill. We think that if you're a PWD, you're making less than 1 million profit, we don't think there should be taxation on that. And we think that if it's higher than that, we even think some of our folks should be tax exempt. So if you are involved in training of disability issues, there should be some tax exempt in that regard. So those are some of the areas that we had concerns, but we can understand that this is one step forward in that direction.
But there was a public hearing that was held on these bills. Weren't these views, presented at that public hearing? Because I know there were tax exemption made for the military, made on inheritance tax. The PW community is also a very crucial community. If this was presented at that public hearing, why wasn't it reflected at the final report of the committee?
Yes, it was presented, and then we also, apart from the presentation, we also sent in documents to that effect. So, but we can understand that sometimes there are challenges here and there in terms of implementation. So, but I think we're going to live to fight another day. This is not the end of the story.
Of course. Well, in another matter, the House of Representatives also directed the Central Bank of Nigeria to suspend its policy on ATM charges. But the Apex Bank says the fee is to prevent customers from being compelled to break their withdrawals into smaller amounts. Is this decision of the House not a setback for the CBN's policy to ensure it improves on its efficiency?
There are two different roles. If you're in business to make money. And if you're in government to make the lives of Nigerians better. That's why you are elected. So those kind of roles are going to be at loggerheads sometime. So the CBN as a regulatory body is going to look at it differently from what the banks want. So at the end of the day, I think there will be a resolution in this direction. But the CBN actually is the quote-unquote the boss in this situation.
Was the CBN invited to, understand its view for implementing this kind of policy before the directive from the House of Representatives? Because you said it's a two-way thing,
right.
And the House took its own decision without hearing from the Apex Bank.
Well, that is the view of the bank, but I know that from the view of the National Assembly, which I'm not a spokesman of the National Assembly, I think there was sufficient input before making that decision.
All right. Let's move to your committee, the disability matters. Your committee has advocated for the establishment of a disability trust fund, yes, to cater for the plights of 35 million people with a disability, right, living with disabilities in Nigeria. How will this guarantee the social protection of people living with disabilities?
Thank you very much for the question. I really appreciate that. This is one of the things we need in terms of awareness, because the main issue with the Disability Act, which I'm sure you're aware of, is a lot of folks are not aware of it. So there are very clear-cut things in the Act. And they gave a moratorium of 5 years, which ended last year. And some things are very clear-cut in the Act. For example, it says right now in Nigeria is unlawful to discriminate against a PWD. It says that every public building, PWDs must have access, not if or but. It says that every time that you are doing recruitment, at least 5% of that should be persons with disability. What we find is that folks are not implementing that. So that is a challenge that we have, and we're really on top of that to make sure that that situation changes.
The establishment of the fund,
yes,
you have not spoken to that effect.
Oh yeah, that's important. Beyond even the Disability Trust Fund, by the way, that's one of the things we presented during the tax reform. Thank you for reminding me of that. We think there are about 35.5 million Nigerians that are PWDs. We think that rather than we're encouraging people begging on the streets, which sometimes that upsets us, we say we want to round them up. We should more or less link into empowering them. The trust fund is going to do that. And beyond that, there's also another fund, the Honourable Trust Fund, which is already in the books. That was something that was done by President Buhari, but it's not funded. So if you fund that, at least you can insure almost all PWDs, because that provides health insurance. Yes, we think that the Disability Trust Fund is extremely important, just like the way you have Naseni, Nagda, and all those folks.
Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned that you advocated for the clampdown on street beggars in the FCT, and these are mostly people that are living with disability. You highlighted issues with rehabilitation centers and other social protection centers. What were the findings from that investigation, and what recommendations do you have for a more efficient system?
Well, we didn't just, that didn't come out of the blue. As you are aware, the major function of the House is to serve as oversight to the executive. There was a lot of petition about that at the time that the beggars were rounded up and were, sent out of Abuja. Or, they had to face law enforcement. So we had petitions that we should intervene. So we found out that there were issues with rehabilitation and social protection. So we went on the floor, moved the motion, which was resolved in the House, to do the investigation. There was a public hearing on that, which was on Tuesday. And this was so well attended, even FCT that was concerned had representation. Yes, what we have found is that the centers that you have in Abuja are nothing to write home about. They're not even livable. So that we have discovered that. We also think that the social protections are inadequate. For example, the Minister of Humanitarian that has this NICPA had their fund that has been frozen for a long time now. That's who's supposed to be doing a lot of the social protection. So it's a long way to go. But I think that the way we have started, when we get the report put together, we're going to let those concerned to be aware of what we think. That would be my response to that.
And what kind of intervention should we expect from your committee regarding these recommendations?
I think the primary one is to get in touch. If we are talking about FCT, for example, with the minister of FCT, That one is a low-hanging fruit because I know he's a listening minister and he's been very effective in FCT. So that we would like him to, as a matter of urgency, rehabilitate or fix the centers, the 3 centers that are in Abuja, so that we will not have a situation that we have all these complaints about trying to get folks out of the street, but they don't have anywhere to go. So yeah, that is one. 2 is that we think the budgets are not sufficient. For example, the Commission for Persons with Disability, who is supposed to be doing all these things, the budget is just 2.7 billion. When you look at the whole budget of Nigeria, so it's like we don't even want them to work. They don't have offices nationwide. They don't even have zonal offices. So we're going to advocate increased funding for these folks. Yeah, those are some of the ideas that we have.
All right, we'll definitely look forward to that, but we'll take a quick break now. The conversation continues shortly. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're glad to have you back. If you're just joining us, you're still watching the Hallowed Chambers, and I still have with me in the studio Honourable Bashiru Dawodu, and he's the chairman of the House Committee on Disability Matters. Now, the National Disability Act, just before we went on the break, is yet to be properly domesticated across the country, just like you rightly mentioned. And you have also identified some issues in the law. Are there particular factors that has made this law ineffective?
Oh, sure. I mean, one is the lack of awareness. Okay. I think that's a big deal. 2 are the subnationals, so which is part of what we're doing now in this town, to actually visit and talk to the governors to do. We know most of our governors are sympathetic. They are very concerned folks. We just need to understand them. Sometimes somebody has to shake you and show you that it takes a second to become a person with disability. You have stroke, you become a person with disability. That can happen to any one of us. You have healthy couples, they never thought they would have kids born with disability. You have to take care of that child for the rest of your life. You have accidents, and then you become a person with disability. That happens every day in Nigeria. What you don't want is that when this, God forbid, happens to you, that you become a burden on your family. So that's why it's a collective effort to do this. And you never know who is going to be affected, you or your family members. So we just need them to see that we go away from charity, sympathy, to actually empowerment. We don't want to see people on the streets everywhere begging when there's things we can do about it. Yes, enforcement has been a problem. To start with, if you are talking about accessibility to public buildings, and we give them 5 years, sometimes that's challenging. For example, in the financial institutions, it's very difficult for someone on wheelchair, even for folks like us, to enter the banks. I'm not picking on them, I'm just using that as an example. So look at that. So whereas persons with disability also bank there, they have money in there. So imagine you have to get somebody to bank for you. Do you really have the confidentiality? They cannot use the ATM. So it's doable, and change is very much possible. Yes, governance, implementation, awareness, domiciling, actually it's progressing. I think we have about 23 states that have domiciled that. The importance of that is that you are going to have an agency. The government will give a lot of budget. There are a lot of governors that have really done excellently well in this regard.
I'll take you slightly away from that matter. I would like us to discuss the issue dominating the public discourse in the National Assembly, and that I'm referring to the face-off between Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan and the President of the Senate, and the Senate in its entirety. The Kogi Central Senator has taken her case to the International Parliamentary Union, which is now questioning the integrity of the Nigerian Senate. What is your honest opinion about this matter? How do you think it can be handled, even, considering the integrity and the total image of the National Assembly?
I like the way you put it, what's my personal opinion, knowing fully well that I'm not the spokesperson for the House. But as a Nigerian citizen, I have an opinion.
Of course.
And as a member of the House, I also have an opinion. The institution is a traditional institution. you get elected, you get to the House, then you see that folks have been elected all over Nigeria. So, you know, you are talking about equals, but then you are going to, then you have leadership. We get together and elect the leadership. The leadership has the authority, the mandate to run the institution. So it is a privilege to even be a chairman of a committee like I am now. It is not your right that you should be a chairman of a committee. This is what I think is really sad about this, is that as someone that really believes in inclusion in all aspects, I think when we're talking about sexual harassment, that's really, really a big issue that should not be trivialized at all. So that's not an issue that should be mixed with the activities of the House. They're separate issues. One is in terms of your conduct in the House, which the House has rules, and the House also has disciplinary measures, which I think, from my own personal opinion, that was what happened in this particular case. Now, to now bring in the issue of sexual harassment, I think that's a reach. You know, so that's my opinion on this.
And from your own assessment as a member of the institution, do you think that this matter was also properly managed? Because a lot of people in the public space have their own opinion about it. But from an inside perspective, can you let Nigerians understand, you know, especially regarding the standing rules that guides both chambers of the National Assembly?
The guiding rules are very clear, and yes, to let Nigerians know, because it's a teachable moment. The rules are not just made from the sky. The rules are put together by an ad hoc committee, and they are debated. At the end, they are voted upon. But it's the standing rules that's going to guide the Assembly until the end of the term. So everybody knows that you cannot violate what the rules that you have signed up to. So yes, my opinion is that reviewing the situation, I think the senator was in violation of the rules, and then the ruling was made in that particular regard. In terms of how it was handled, well, when you face a situation that you are going to court or talking about court or going to IPU, I think that situation is being aggravated. And then it becomes a negative for the country.
I would like to bring you back to your constituency. How have your people felt your impact in representing them in the House of Representatives, aside your own holding as the chairman of the House Committee on Disability Matters? How have your people in your constituency felt your impact?
I think the folks in my constituency, the way I look at it is that I'm really blessed to represent them. I'm talking about Oshodi Solo 1 in Lagos State, that at least twice now they have chosen me to represent them. And I'm really grateful they have making me to fulfill that dream. What have we done? I think we have been able to touch all aspects of life. At the last count, we've provided 60 classrooms, because when we campaigned in the last term, we find that there was situations where kids were sitting on the floor and all that. In the constituency, you no longer have that. That I can state clearly. We've been able to provide 2 primary care centers. We're able to do empowerment, quote unquote, like other folks also do. We've done training of teachers. We've provided a lot of lights. We're still doing the lights. We provided a lot of solar-powered boreholes. There's been a lot of reach out to widows and the elderly. There's a lot of free food package programs. And then I think we can just go on and on, you know. And I think that the feedback has also been very, very useful to us. Are we perfect? No. We're going to keep striving to make their lives to continue to get better.
That's our package on the Hallowed Chambers this week. You can watch a repeat broadcast at 7 a.m. on Sunday. Also, you can see this episode again on TVC News YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to TVC News YouTube channel and also follow us on all our social media handles. Thank you for watching. I am Tijesu Adeoye. See you next time.